Hello, everybody. It's very, very beautiful and inspiring each Sunday to come and be with all of you. So welcome. Today, we have a different session. Some of you know that we have been part of the One World Bearing Witness in collaboration with Elizabeth Diebold last year, or in the last 2 times actually. And we have agreed to represent some cycle during the year. So today, Sunday, is one of them. So some of you might not know us. Maybe some of you are new to this session. So I'm just very quickly say a few words, and then I'll introduce Avraham, that is our guest today, for the 4 hours. So my name is Manon Desjardins. I founded this one meditation with Rick Bissonnette about 6 years ago, and shortly after, Jeff Sullivan and Joanna Sears, that are here today, joined the team. And our intention was simply to provide a collective we space for meditation and just come together to give ourselves to the practice. And no matter from where we are coming from, our background. And you keep coming, so we keep coming as well and being there with you. So it's really beautiful. It's really sacred and very touching each time. So it's very simple how the day will unfold, even though it's a bit different today because of the cycle, but nevertheless, it's the same concept. At the top of the hour, you hear a gong. We go in meditation for about 45 minutes. We're followed by a break. As simple as that. Normally, we have a guest teacher that will start the day with us. And today, the special thing is that Avraham, it will be the whole day hosting. So it's very, very generous of you. So let me introduce Rami very shortly. Rami Avraham Eiffel is, I find very interesting because you gave me your introduction, but I was curious. I went a little bit further and searched on my own. And I was really impressed and inspired. Eiffel is an artist, and he began sketching portraits of children in hospitals. And he continues to do so for children and refugees when he's been on his tours with the Zen peacekeeper, especially in Syria, Bosnia, and Greece. He's been a student of Zen Buddhism since 2006. He's undergone intensive study and training while living for 2 years in a Zen mountain monastery, and another 2 years in a Zen center in New York. So he's been practicing meditation for over 15 years. He's also a Dharma holder in the Zen peacemakers lineage, and also the last student of Zen master Bernie Glassman. And I'm sure he's going to share a few words on him during our time together. He's the former executive director of the Zen Peacemakers International, and has organized and co-led the Bearing Witness retreats in Auschwitz-Birkenau, the concentration camps in Germany, and also in the Native American Bearing Witness programs. Avraham Rami was also at the One World Bearing Witness with Elizabeth in 2019. He was co-hosting. Today, Avraham weaves Jewish and Buddhist spirituality with nonviolent communication, way of counsel, cross-cultural peace-building dialogue, and art making. He leads prayer, mindfulness, and meditation in various venues in New York City, internationally, as well as a consult social enterprises and human rights organization. So it's very, it's an honor to have you here, Avraham, and we're ready to surrender to you for the next 4 hours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manon, for this generous introduction. And thank you to Rick and Jeff and Joanna and One Meditation for inviting me and partnering with One World Bearing Witness. Manon invoked Bernie Glassman, my teacher, and he was interested in one thing. There was one thing that was very interesting to him, that was excited to him, and that was to find skillful means for people to experience the oneness of life. That's it. That's what he was interested in. For him, this oneness was available and immediate, and he was so eager to share that with others. That's how we created those bearing witness retreats, street retreats, that fed his creativity in the Dharma. And he would have loved this. He passed away in 2018. But he loved so much seeing people coming from different backgrounds, different countries. He loved the notion of Indra's net, of us, of humans creating this network of awareness that reflects itself in itself. In a way, this is what we're doing today. And like Manon said, that this is part of a cycle of returning to some really wonderful teachings that we had in December when we did a 24-hour meditation vigil, and maybe some of you were on it. And the intention of that day was exactly what we're doing now, but for a whole 24 hours. And over 2,000 people joined as the whole planet was rotating around the sun, one full cycle. And even now, as I'm looking through the little windows on the screen, I see different times of the day. I can see the sun coming in from one, a little darker from others, maybe lamps. So this is a wonderful invitation to not just sit together, but to actually acknowledge the fact that we are connecting so many places around this planet right now in this weak consciousness that, as Manon called it. I'm hearing birds outside my window here in Brooklyn, in New York. Maybe some of you are hearing the night crickets. Or maybe the songs of the morning birds. So we'll be sitting for today and in this marvel and mystery of the whole thing existing, moving, living simultaneously. We will be listening for the next 40 minutes to one of the presenters we had during the vigil. His name is Charles Eisenstein. And I think there's a longer introduction of him in the beginning of that interview. He's an interesting speaker that weaves economics, politics, environmental with the spiritual and with the global. And in his talk, he will talk specifically about his love and our love to her. And he speaks about the earth. And especially now when we're in these unusual times of the pandemic, where the reach of it is so vast and it's easy for many of us, including myself, to kind of collapse on our human experience. He will remind us to remember that this is all happening on a larger stage. And as we listen to him, try already to move into that meditative space that we'll be cultivating for the next 3.5 hours. And in Zen, we talk about listening as dark to the mind and radiant to the heart. Dark to the mind and radiant to the heart. Meaning, let the speech, even my speech right now, to just wash through you and let it affect your whole body and your heart right now with some acknowledgement that you don't need to engage it with your mind or to try to understand. Really just let it flow through you. And we'll listen to Charles until he finishes, and then it will be probably around 10 minutes to the round hour. We'll take a break, and then we'll return at the round hour, and there'll be a sound of a bell. And then we'll start our meditation, and I'll start just with about 10 or 15 minutes of just basic guidance, acknowledging that some people may be here for the first time and maybe even never meditated before. I also acknowledge that there's maybe a vast experience in the room with us. So if you feel you would like to receive those instructions, stay with your speakers on. Otherwise, please feel free to mute me or just take whatever will help you in the next 4 hours. So like I said, as we're moving into Charles speaking to us, let's just already take a breath in, find our comfortable seat, and let Charles' words just wash us and be radiant to our heart. Thank you.
Hi. So we're about to start our fourth meditation cycle, which puts us halfway through or right before halfway through. And I can tell. I mean, I can see it that people are starting to get tired. There are many of us who have been meditating for the last 9 hours, and that's really impressive. That's very. It's very touching. And I want to encourage you to really make good use of your breaks, you know, to get some air, to walk around, to do a yoga stretch or two, to drink some water or some tea or coffee if you want to. But in that really taking, just kind of letting go and shifting your posture. And what I'd like you to do is to pay attention to what happens when you come back and sit down again. Because in my experience, tonight, it's night here in Frankfurt, in my experience, there's a coming back into this space. There's a deepening that I experience. I don't know if you have that experience, Rami, but there's an opening and a deepening. Something heavy, but not heavy in a bad way. Something with weight seems to be forming between us. And every time I step away and come back, I encounter this. And it's something that feels significant to me, and it doesn't feel like it's simply mine. Does that relate to anything you're experiencing, Rami?
Yes, I've also been experiencing this deepening throughout the hours as we were sitting. And I join you in the invitation to take good use of the breaks, whatever makes you feel nourished to continue. And remember also that because what we're sitting is just our experience, even sleepiness or tiredness is just an experience that we can fully be open to in our bodies. So we can accept that and be open to that. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a break or take a rest, but it means that you can also just be with that. And it's a wonderful insight into our capacity. And like Elizabeth said, this is a remarkable task that you've taken today. And thank you so much for your persistence and your practice.
Yeah, thank you, Rami. And I also notice that when I am with this deepening and with this deepening of the space and return to it, and there's this experience of opening up, that again, I don't feel this as simply my experience. And paying attention to it, not making anything out of it with my mind, just paying attention to it. There's a vibration that comes, and I think, I mean, the way I understand it is that it is an awareness of our non-separation. And I think that I would like us to not make something of this, but just note it, just be with that it is. And I think the more we become aware of that, also the more it opens. And I think that is a really appropriate way for us to begin this fourth meditation cycle with our guide for this next 3 hours, who will be with us for the next 45 minutes. And that is Charles Eisenstein. And I know that many of you are very eager to hear from him. So let me say a few words about Charles. And again, one of the things that I am touched most by in terms of Charles's work is that he always goes to the bottom of things. He doesn't accept sort of easy answers or conventional wisdom. Maybe that's what I want to say. He's not someone who kind of jumps on sort of the already present ways of thinking. He takes things all the way to the bottom, either sacred economics or the more beautiful world that our heart knows is possible, which I love. What an amazing title. His new book, Climate. Charles goes to the depth of things, and that's part of what I really appreciate about his work, and why I'm really delighted that he's going to be sharing with us or guiding us into bearing witness to our love of her. And that's also something that touches me about Charles, is that Charles is such a lover that he recognizes the power of love and the life-sustaining necessity of it, or that it's almost one and the same. And so if we can, if Charles is with us, is that so?
Hello.
There you are. Hey, great. Thank you so much for being with us. And I know it's late for you and you're in Spain, and deeply appreciate your presence with us.
Yeah. Thank you for that very kind welcome. And thank you for holding this event and inviting people into this meditation. There might be an action-oriented part of us that is in a state of urgency about the state of the planet, that might question whether something like this is going to help.
Mm.
And do you want me to just like keep talking, or are we?
You're
Yeah.
welcome
Okay.
to take it away.
Okay. So yeah. And you might think that if your child were playing at the edge of a cliff and about to fall off, or if your house were on fire, you wouldn't stop to meditate. You would do something about it. And the situation is so urgent. So can we ever pause or rest? And if we knew exactly what to do, then maybe the answer would be no. But what I have discovered, what I've observed, is that many of the responses to the crisis are actually intensifying the crisis. That's because we don't really understand its nature. So we as a collective are iterating the same kinds of solutions that come from the mindset that the problem comes from. And that the urgency is genuine. But what it really wants to call us to do is to come into fuller alignment with our service to this earth, to come into fuller alignment with our love for this earth, because so much of the way that people are living today is not in alignment with the consciousness that we are developing of being in love with earth. And so this generates a discomfort that we name urgency. And pretty much, it's not that that anyone is totally unaligned with their love of earth, but in our current circumstances, external and internal, it's pretty rare to be fully in alignment either. And so there's this tension between our consciousness, our love, who we want to become, and where we are right now, the legacy self that we've inherited from our culture, from our lineage, from our upbringing. And this discomfort is what we call urgency. So to translate it onto hurry can actually be a way of escaping it and not really meeting it. And there's a certain comfort in let's hurry up and do something. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do something, but where is this doing coming from? Is it coming from really knowing what to do? Or is it coming from the discomfort of not knowing what to do? And if that's the case, and we really want to be effective, maybe we do have to stop. Maybe we do have to take a step back so that we can see the patterns of doing that we're stuck in and understand the root of the crisis that we are in. Because only with a full, genuine understanding are we able even to know what to do. So that's a lengthy way of welcoming this practice that you're engaged in, and this taking of a pause from any doing at all, so that what lurks behind the noise, what is hidden in the depths of the silence behind the noise, can come into awareness. Because I'm supposed to talk about connection to earth, love of earth. So I can say that this is something that is native to all of us, not something that has to be taught, but something that can be obscured, something that can be blocked. And in that state of blockage, in that state of disconnection, the discomfort intensifies and can only be maintained through increasing levels of bribery and threat. Bribery of the constant offering of substitutes for what we really want. And the threats of here's what's going to happen to you if you don't conform to the program. Economic bribery and threats, psychological bribery and threats. The unmet need that I'm speaking of, the unmet longing, is the longing to connect, to be connected, to belong, the longing to belong, to be at home here on earth. The absence of that felt experience of connection generates an endless hunger that we name greed, or that we name addiction. And so often, at least in the environmental narrative, so often that is blamed as the cause of our crisis. This primal characteristic of the human being called greed. Something, and there's a relief in naming that, isn't there? Because now we have something to fight. We have something to contend with. We have something to go to war against, thereby enacting a familiar pattern, the familiar solution set, which is find the bad thing and conquer that. And can you see how this approach to problem solving, find the bad thing, find the bad person, find the bad thing inside myself, how akin that is to the mindset that destroys this world? Find the bad thing and kill it. Find the weed, find the bug, find the bacteria, find the insect, kill the wolves, tame the wild. All of these are part of the same mindset. And I'm feeling a little distracted by some very loud people outside my room. I hope it's not distracting you. Just needed to name that. So I'm just going to go tell them to shut up right now, and I'll be back. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so find the enemy. Yeah, so we name, and I hope I'm not insulting people by saying we here, Charles, speak for yourself, but it's a collective we that I'm talking about, a culture that, in fact, nobody actually, well, I won't say nobody, but fewer and fewer of us really resonate with that. But still, even myself, it's like this background chatter. Maybe that's why they're chattering back there, to remind me of the background chatter. Yeah, so naming greed, which is actually a symptom, as the cause, thereby bringing us into another pattern, which is the endless war. It's a related pattern, the endless war on the symptom. But when we understand where greed comes from, then the war on greed is no longer necessary, because we can address, well, maybe we can't address it. Maybe we can't actually, we don't know how to address it. How do we actually regain a sense of belonging? How do we become connected again to life, to each other, to the world, when we have generations of habits of disconnection that developed for very good reasons? They developed through trauma. They developed as a kind of protection. They have been necessary, and then they become habitual. And it's not just on the personal level, these habits, but it's also the social level. We have constructed, it's actually not that we sat down and let's construct this thing. It was a co-creation. But I'll just say we have constructed a society that screams separation at its inhabitants all the time, where we go outdoors and we are confronted everywhere with strangers, even in most places in the West, at least, even our close neighbors, we don't really know them very well. We don't know their grandparents' stories, for example. We don't know about their marital arguments and makeups like you would in a hunter-gatherer tribe or a medieval village. I mean, these villages are pretty tightly packed, and stories circulate about everyone and everything. And these stories are connected to generations and generations and generations, and to places where things happened, and every place has a name and every being has a name, and you're in relationship to every being. This is not just about reestablishing contact with nature, but really what we crave is relationship, intimacy, intimate relationship with nature, with all beings, with the human beings around us. This is not something that you can, with a psychological insight, that you can remedy. It's built into the social and even physical infrastructure of our civilization. But at least when we identify the source of the greed, the source of the addictive consumption, at least we're no longer chasing a false enemy. We're no longer tilting at windmills that we have imagined to be evil giants. And we enter a very good place, the place of, I have no idea what to do about it, which is so much better than thinking you know what to do about it and actually not knowing what to do about it. And I hope that your meditation practice can give you some familiarity with this place, because only by abiding in it can we stay there long enough for authentic knowledge to arise. The knowledge of, here is something I can do about it. That requires it requires listening. And that listening develops through comfort with the silence, through comfort with, or it's a glimmer that we see that is available through comfort in the darkness. We are unable to see that glimmer when the floodlights are on all the time to dispel the darkness, even though those floodlights are only illuminating the things we already know and casting shadows. And we can't hear that whisper, that stirring of a new story when the familiar, comforting music is blaring all the time. And we cannot feel the stirring of the breeze that will deliver us from the doldrums unless we stop so furiously pulling on the oars, desperately trying to maintain the direction that we've been in. And so I welcome you into this darkness and into this silence and into this stillness. And maybe we'll just dip into that for a minute here. You've just been immersed in it. But here it is. Quickly available. Even in 10 seconds, there it is. And in this place, what I mentioned before, our native love of life, love of earth, love of all things, it's pretty present now. And we recognize it's always there in all people. maybe if you're with somebody now, even in a house, and you tune into it, you can feel its presence in that person, just as it is in yourself. It's become clear to me that the healing of our biosphere depends on accessing this thing and not on accessing fear about what might happen to us if we continue to destroy life on Earth. That is a ridiculous appeal, to try to scare people into caring, to try to scare people into love, to try to scare people into doing the things that you're doing from love. What if I said to you, why should I take care of my son? Why not just give him the bare minimum to avoid legal consequences? Why should I even feed him? You know, why? Give me a reason. And if you say, well, Charles, if you don't do that, bad things will happen to you. He won't take care of you in your old age, and all of us will think badly of you. You get bad PR, and child services might come and punish you. And I say, oh, okay, I guess you're right. I guess I'll take good care of him now. You're not getting at the root of the problem. And I will, at best, take only the half measures that are necessary to avoid those consequences. And that child will not thrive. We need to do a lot better than that. I'm not going to go into my, usually when I'm speaking about climate change, I make points like this, that the crisis is not actually about human survival. It's about what kind of world we want to live in, not whether we will live. Because I do not think that climate change is going to come rescue us, that it's going to make us change. It's going to make us stop destroying life. In fact, I just read an article today about the horrendous environmental impact of producing solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, electric battery storage, et cetera, all the things necessary for the, quote, green economy. If they were scaled up, like the number of I was reading about a silver mine in Mexico that's used to make things for the solar panels. You know, I hope I'm not going into too much detail here. This is supposed to be a more of a spiritual thing, but here we are. Dissolving the border between matter and spirit. So the silver mine, like 100 square kilometers of pits and roads and pavement and machines and tailings ponds surrounded by 20-meter high walls full of toxic water. And the article said we need 120 more of those just to meet the demand for silver that would be required to transition to clean energy. Not to mention the copper, the lithium, the molybdenum, the cobalt, you know, all of the coltran, all of the other minerals necessary. Like, how did I get onto that? Yeah. So anyway, I was saying that it's a question of what world do we want to live in, rather than can we survive in this world? Can we continue our way of life, continue the world-destroying machine, but switching with a different fuel source, you know, using carbon-neutral fuels? I don't think that's what we actually want. I don't think that any of us would say, everything is fine now if only global warming weren't happening, then everything would be fine. No, global warming is a symptom of everything not being fine. And if we somehow suppress that symptom without changing everything, then this planet would still continue to deteriorate because it is a living being. Its organs are the forests and the soil and the wetlands and the whales, the bats, the bears, the fish, the insects, the people. These are all organs of a living being. And if the organs are degraded, if the organs are sick, then the being will be sick. A living being, that's something worthy of love. Worthy of love for more than its instrumental utility, the benefits it can bring us. It's a being, and the being is hurting. So, just like you cannot force me to love my child well, or to love my partner well, so also we cannot force any human being to love Earth well. But if I were mistreating my child, you might ask, well, why? What's getting in the way of the love that I know you must have for this child? What's bothering you? What's hurting? What's hurting you so much that you're feeling that pain instead of the love? What's causing so much rage, so much grief, so much anguish, so much that you have to numb yourself to everything, even the love? What's happening to you, my brother, my sister? That's what we would ask. What's happened to cut us off from our love of Earth? And to pursue this question with curiosity and not blame. The curiosity that actually seeks an answer and does not ask what's wrong with you as an accusation. And so in love, we can choose to serve love, to serve life, and to serve it better than we would if we're just scared about what will happen to us. I came across a saying by a Kogi, one of the Kogi shaman. He was speaking about the devastation of the sacred places in Colombia, especially on the coast, through draining wetlands for development and for hydropower and to build ports and do all other things that are being funded in the guise of green development. Because if only we do all of that without fossil fuels, then it's fine. And he was saying, you know, if you knew she could feel, you would stop. And I think he correctly diagnosed the root cause of this problem that we are facing. It's that we do not feel. Why? We do not feel the pain of this being. If you knew she could feel, if you don't know she can feel, then where's the empathy? It's the same thing that facilitates violence against women. It's called objectification. In order to exploit or degrade or harm somebody, you pretty much have to degrade them first. You have to dehumanize them first. It's a universal tactic in war. You dehumanize the enemy, you reduce them to something less than human, and then you can bomb them. You objectify a woman, and then you can abuse her. We objectify the earth, make it into something less than sacred, see it as a pile of resources, a pile of things, as a dead thing, a collection of insensate matter without intelligence, without consciousness, upon which we can impose our intelligence and engineer the world into a better place. That's the same attitude of desacralization, dehumanization, objectification that facilitates any violence. So we have an ideology. We've been born into an ideology that holds the world as less than sacred and less than a feeling alive thing. And that cutoff of feeling also comes through the trauma of living in a world built on separation and through our personal traumas too. So I believe this diagnosis is correct. And I'm not talking about theoretically knowing she can feel. Like every abuser of women theoretically knows, or abuser of anybody theoretically knows that this is a human being and they have, a nervous system and they can feel and they have emotions and stuff. But do you actually know that she can feel? And I would say that the knowledge is latent within all of us. But for it to become active, for somebody immersed in the culture that I have been immersed in, it needs to be activated. It needs to be summoned. The feeling needs to be summoned. And that can happen through various kinds of experiences. It has to be made visible. And maybe as I invoke it now, maybe it becomes more visible. And I'll mention one other thing about this phrase. If you knew she could feel, you would stop. You can say it with different kinds of emphasis. And my favorite way of saying it is, if you knew she could feel, you would stop. And so here is a tremendous validation of human nature. It says, I know you. If only you knew, then you would stop because you're an empathic being, because you are here to serve life. That's who you really are. If we can hold an invitation like that, it's hard for people to resist. If we can see people with the eyes of, you are a lover of life. If we can see ourselves with those eyes, then we invite ourselves to enact that. And if we can see the world as alive, that forms the foundation of a choice to be in a living world and not a dead world. To serve, therefore, a living world and not a dead world. It's my favorite little motto that I've made for myself. The story that I hold about another being is an invitation for that other being to become as the story holds them. Which means that the most powerful spiritual practice that you can cultivate is the practice of reverence. Reverence. To see another as a holy being. That's an invitation for them to become a holy being. To see the world with reverence is an invitation for the world to become sacred, which is really an invitation for yourself to enter a sacred world, which is already there waiting for us. If I were like speaking in front of a room, like in front of an audience, then I would know if these words are landing. I would see your faces reflecting back at me. It's a bit harder over a screen here to sense the some more subtle energy. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Yeah. Now is a time when hidden truths are becoming visible. The truths of who we are and why we're here. The truth that we are here for the same reason all beings are here, which is service to life. In my approach to understanding climate change, what I learned, I think I mentioned it before, with the part about the organs of Gaia, it's that life creates the conditions for life. Each being in the world contributes to the aliveness of the world. In an ecosystem, every being renders a gift unto the whole. It's not like they used to think where everything's in competition with each other and, if the competitors to the wolves die out, the wolves will be better off. And if the competitors to one die out, the others will be better off. That's not how it is. If anything is removed from an ecosystem, then the entire ecosystem becomes weaker. Same is true for the planet. And as we degrade life on Earth, the whole planet becomes weaker, becomes no longer able to meet the challenge of changing levels of atmospheric gases, for example. The naturalist J.B. McKinnon calls it the world we have today a 10% world, which is a poetic statistic referring to the fact that to the depletion of life. We have less than 10% of the whales that there were a few hundred years ago, maybe 10% of the fish, 10 or 20% of the insects, less than 1% of the virgin forests of North America. And you could go down the line: mangrove swamps, wetlands, peat bogs, boreal forests, toads, frogs, bats, salmon, lions, elephants, all severely depleted. Yet life is so tenacious. Even with all of your organs depleted by 90%, they still function. The earth is still hanging on. And if we could only restore those organs, this planet would quickly regain its health. So I just went on that detour to say that the purpose of life, the purpose of your life, is the same as the purpose of all life: to render a gift unto the livingness of the world. You're here to make the world, to make the cosmos even more alive. Therefore, as we awaken to that, any life that is not connected to that mission, which is service to life, becomes intolerable. It generates that feeling of not being aligned. It generates the urgency. And so I would invite us to put on those lenses of seeing every person that way. Even if you're talking to Donald Trump, or seeing the person that you judge the most, to know better than they know it themselves: I know why you are here. You're here for the same reason I'm here. You are here to serve life. Maybe that's blocked. Maybe it's benumbed. Maybe you've been bribed and coerced and shut down so that you're not acting from that. And that must really hurt. No wonder you're so addicted. No wonder you're so mean. And what can I do about it? I don't know. But that's the right question. We don't have the immediate answer maybe to the question. And then we can ask that of ourselves as well, seeing ourselves with those eyes. I know why I'm here. I'm here to participate in the coming more and more alive of the world. Right now, that means the healing of the damage that's been done. And not just to non-human beings, but to human beings too. The planet is not going to heal if society does not heal. And if your work calls you to heal society, to work with the homeless or the prisons or sick people or even in your own family, that is just as much in service to life, just as much of an organ repair as working with soil or forests or wetlands. And so to see ourselves, yes, I know why I'm here. I am here in service to life. That's why any misalignment with that hurts so much, is so uncomfortable, generates so much urgency. I am here in service to life. I am here in service to life. Know that this is true. And as you give your attention right now to the truth of this, the truth that you are here to serve life, you can feel the imprint that this attention to this truth is making upon you. And in your meditation to follow this, all you need to do is to allow this imprint to settle in a little deeper. To accelerate a process of change within you. So I think I'll end with that, and with great thanks to the spirit that has gathered you together on this program, to Elizabeth and all the others who have served the being that is gathering us together here. Thank you very much.
So thank you, everyone. Let's take just a few minutes to stretch or anything you need for a break, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes to continue our service to life.